Good morning, folks. This is Mika Govik, and we are with another episode of Go Big with Mika. And today I am talking to Amanda Lillard. Amanda is such a badass. I've known her for many, many years. We just thought about how long it was, like 7 or 8 years for sure.
Mhm.
And she went from being a language coach, that's when I met her in a co working space. So, hi to all the ex office nomads, to a
Mhm.
licensed sailboat captain, and then to adventuring as a cook on tugboats in Western Alaska. So, and the Aleutian Islands, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not even sure. and, the,
Yeah.
and the Bering Sea. And of course, that transition, that progression has changed who she is, like as a person, how she sees herself and how she experiences life and what the options that are out there. And that's what we wanted to talk about today. uh, the title Amanda chose for this talk, very apt, is letting go. Welcome, Amanda. So happy to have you.
And thank you for having me, Misha.
So you are on a boat right now,
I
but
am.
that's not the tugboat.
On a sailboat. No,
Yeah.
this is not pretty.
But that's not a tugboat, that is your boat, correct?
Mm-hmm. Rosie that I live on.
So the boats have played a role in your life long before you set out to become a licensed captain and then going to Alaska on a tugboat, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah. But
start us there.
everybody assumes I did, but I grew up in Wisconsin and there's not a lot of sailing there. Little boats that play on lakes and things like that. But when I moved to Seattle, one of them was that you could live on a sailboat. And I saw a sailboat and a person living on it, and it was a boat, and I was enthralled, and I'm like, I'm doing that somehow. I'm going to make that happen. 2003, and in 2004 or 5, I bought my first to that, and I had that boat until 2012, and then I bought this boat and have been.
I mean, this is already so fascinating because I feel like everybody who moves to Seattle from a landlocked place, and seeing all that water, I was totally attracted to houseboat living. Not quite sailboat, but houseboat. And I'm like, oh yeah, we need to live on a houseboat. And I've heard that so often. And of course, there are not that many people who actually do live on houseboats or sailboats. So I think that's already very interesting that you really went for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was at the time. Well, it kind of still is a Seattle mortgage is cheaper than rent, and so if you can buy a cheap boat and camp on it and save up some money, and sailboats that you can buy they're old and very uncomfortable, and they leak, and they might not be a huge amount of fun, but you can suck it up and not expect much for creature comforts, and up to this boat, which was a big upgrade.
Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful boat. I've been. Her name is Rosie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's a beautiful boat, but it's still tight quarters.
it's tight quarters, and it's still an old boat. I mean, she's 34 years old, and by no means posh compared to what newer boats are. And there's about it that you have to deal with, but you get a boat, and you get to be on a boat, and to me, that's what it's about.
Mm. And so when we met, you had a very successful language coaching business, with private clients, with corporate clients. You have a book out that sold consistently. Uh, what was the thing where you said, "Okay, I'm done with it"?
Well, first, it's not completely done. It's still, and there's still book sales in the background, and the website is still up, and so there's still passive income from. Really important to me, because
Yeah.
the goal, as you've already mentioned, I want to work on a tugboat for a huge amount of time. And so it's nice to have that income still there. It's by no means going to support me completely, but it's there and it's doing its thing. Mostly, I remember really vividly. I was here on the boat, and I was frustrated because I wanted to take this boat places, and I knew that it's going to need some big investments to be able to handle bigger water, and I wanted to go to Alaska. And the money that I was making from my language could afford me those big upgrades, and it also wasn't going to give me the time to go because it was people daily, and I couldn't leave for weeks or months or years. And I was texting with a friend of mine named Jordan when expressing this frustration, and Jordan is an exceptional person, rowed in a rowboat with 3 other people across the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh my God! Yes.
In a rowboat race, and it's not a rowboat like you picture on a lake, but you row it nonetheless across the ocean.
Yeah.
And he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for it, and so he knows about this, to be doing something and not getting there. And he said, "It sounds like a call to adventure to me." And I thought about that, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's what this is. Like, I'm supposed to be doing some November of 2019." And it really struck me with the adventure. It was like, that was my frustration. Like, I want to, but I can't get this boat places that it can do a lot, but it couldn't do everything. And it was the very next month that here at the marina, my marina manager was having, I met one of my neighbors who had seen me chartering, because by this point I was also chartering, doing day sales with her and saving up money that way also. But again, it required me to and be doing things, and it was also when I had people aboard, I couldn't tear her apart. I needed to do, and so projects were out of the question, even if I had money coming in from it. So I was still at this impasse at this birthday party, and my neighbor, who I had never met or spoken to me chartering, knew how active I was on the boat, and he's like, "You would make money, and then you have all this time off, and you get benefits." And I was like, "Well, those things all sound like," and so he told me what I would need to do and what school to go to for certifications for what I would need to be on the tugboat. And I finished those, got hired immediately when I finished the class as a cook. Zero whatsoever. And initially I turned them down, and I called him and I said, "Give me a job as a cook." And I told him no. And he's like, no, you call them back. You say, "I'm sorry, I misspoke. I don't want the job." And he said, "Amanda, you have never worked on a tugboat before for anything but being a cook. So be a cook." And
that is amazing. I mean, is cooking something that's something you enjoy or do? I mean, your kitchen you've lived on a boat for a long time. Kitchen small, right? I mean,
yeah. It was weird because she called me. The crewing coordinator called me, and she said, "I have a cook position for you're cooking for 8 to 10 people. Can you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And my thought was, I'll learn. How it's food, like it's food. It wouldn't necessarily be great food, but I was like, it was something. Also, my neighbor was like, "I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you what to cook. Tell you how to do this job." Not that he had ever been a cook before, but and it gave me the confidence to say, "Okay, I'm going to do this." And
that is so amazing. May I just interrupt you for a second? Just like this, because that's something I want people to take away. So your first response was, "Hell no." I was like, why should I be cooking? I'm not a cook. Yeah. So very natural first response is no. but then
Mhm.
you went back. Okay, it took a little bit of poking from your
Mhm.
more experienced water life from your neighbor, um, and you said yes, and you went with the life with the mindset. I'll learn. I mean, it's food.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
People eat.
Yeah.
I can make food. I eat.
Yeah. And also, like, he told me, he's like, they don't expect the world of you. You know, they
Yeah.
just need food, and as long as they don't expect it to be like masterpiece food. He's like, no, this
Right.
is a tugboat. Like, you're not a tugboat. Like, oh,
You're not
okay, I
turning
can do
into
that.
a TV chef making food on a tugboat. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
that's the other thing. It's important to have someone who just puts your, I don't know, weird ideas and everything back in
mhm.
perspective, right? Yeah.
And he did that. He did that, and he also like told me how to behave way that I learned later was extremely valuable to me. These people are going to try to walk all over you, and it to do with gender. A lot of people assume gender things on the
Mhm.
tugboat, and yes, there's some. I did not find that gender had that much to do with it. Granted, I was on a boat,
Mhm.
um, but nonetheless, they cared much more how you. And he told me, he's like, you go in there, you tell them, you stay out of my galley, I do things, and so I did that, just assuming that's how it's my only access to any inside knowledge. I
Right.
no other went on these boats, and so I did. I got there, and I'm like, this is my space. I give you the food, and we do things on my terms, and I held very very strong to. I learned later that I had intimidated somebody aboard super easy to intimidate, and he was kind of a bully to most people, and he always treated me very well and with respect and things like that. And I was ended up in an airport in Dutch Harbor, um, with my captain. We were both flying in this airport for a long time because Dutch Harbor airports and airplanes and wind, and I have my phone. So anyway, in the airport for a long time, and I was talking about this. Sorry, plug my phone in. And there's a crow walking on the boat right now. Sorry, little distract.
Mhm.
And I said, he wasn't like that to me. And he said, well, it's because you're a woman, and he never worked with afraid of all the things that you can do wrong as a male working with it, because that he was one that there was another female there, and he was horrible in the same way that he was horrible to the men.
Yeah.
But he was horrible to her, gender thing, because he treated her terribly. And he said, well, you scared us. Did I scare this person? He said, you walked on this boat and you said, here's my space, here's how I do things, and these are my rooms. And that was one of the things my neighbor told me. It was like, even the captain follows your rules. And I didn't know how important that was going to be, to on the boat and not go crazy on the boat because they will walk all over you, because that's human nature, and they're
Yeah.
frustrated and they're cramped, and they want things. Is a nice comfort to people, and so people
Right.
can get kind of weird around it.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of what you said can apply to anybody in any circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just highlighted because it's close quarters. It's not an easy life.
No,
Uh, it's a hard job. It's just like out in the elements. It's a very exposed to nature and
mm-hmm.
everything, and then the close quarter. So it brings out maybe a couple of
Mm-hmm.
things more. But even when you are like in a corporate position and you step into a new environment as a newbie,
Mm-hmm.
as the rookie or something, there will always be people who say like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, that's the beginner, so I can put them in their place in whichever way that might be,
Mm-hmm.
and being like, this is my space, I know how to run
Mm-hmm.
this space, I'm not telling you how to do yours, so you don't tell me how to do mine,
Mhm.
is huge. It's hard to do, especially you did it for the first time and you ran with the advice of someone who knew the boats but hadn't had this particular job yet. Just right. That's
Mhm. Right. But what you're saying is that I remember now doing the same thing in the language classes I was teaching. I was very young,
yeah,
maybe 20, 25, 26 years old, which is young. At the time, I remember thinking, I'm not that young. Why does everybody think that I'm?
I know. Yeah, I started teaching that age too.
Right. And I was terrified. A lot of faking it, a lot of pretending that I wasn't terrified. That even pretend confidence, people react to. I have found that can be really helpful when you're
Yeah,
trying to an audience of any sort or interact with people. Just space that you take up in the world, and that it is your
yeah,
space, and that it's yours. You can
yeah.
want to or need to for whatever reason.
I love that. I love that. That's so important. And it might be a smaller or a larger space, but you have a certain leeway in that. And I remember that too. Like the things like, okay, at least I need to look confident when I stand in front of a group or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm and I talk about this fake it till you make it with a lot of people because that's not how it felt to me. And that's not how
Mm-hmm.
it feels to me when I do new things now. How
Mm-hmm.
about you? And for me, it feels more like, okay, this is where I want to go. So
It
this is
depends
how I imagine it.
yeah, it depends how out of my realm of experience I am.
Mhm. Yeah.
Done something before. If I've never cooked before, yeah, I'm faking it because I don't
Right.
earned the confidence in it yet. If it's tangential to that, I'm learning how to run the boat.
Mhm.
I'm learning how to steer a tugboat. I'm learning how to do. Then it's less faking it because it's closer to what I. So there's some level of background to it, but when it's brand
Yeah.
new and I've never done it before, that kind of boat before, I've never cooked for that many people before,
Yeah.
then I'm definitely
Right. Right. I mean, that was a totally new thing. You're also a licensed captain. I remember you studying for that test. And I put on the lipstick because your company is Red Lips Sink Ship. So,
yeah.
how has that experience been? I mean, you've been a business owner before with your
Mm-hmm.
language coaching, but uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's very different from, I would imagine, very different from having people in your space, being
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the safety of people and for giving them a
Mm-hmm.
good time.
Yeah.
It's like that's a big stretch, right? I mean, no, I was on your boat. I know you handle it gracefully, but it must be a big
Yeah.
thing to grow into.
It is, and it was funny. Even the name of the company, which is it's me anymore. Um, Red Lip Sink Ships, but I remember it in my memory. It seems like it was a sticker on a dumpster. Um, and I had like just this very beginning inkling of becoming a charter boat captain, and it felt very bold and ballsy to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought, I'm naming it that, and I took a picture of it, um, and it also kind of wasn't taking it very seriously as a livelihood or a business. It was I just want to play with this,
Mm-hmm.
and a playful thing where it was like, okay, I want to make some money with this boat, but more I wanted to gain handling the boat, having other people on the boat that didn't know how to sail, the rules that go with it that you need to know. I wanted to know those things, and chartering
Yeah.
was learn those. And I didn't know what it was going to be, and so I had this silly, which now whenever I go to the boat parts store and I buy things and they ask if I have an account, I was like, I would have put a different name like on my account and not the business name, because they're all, but it is kind of a fun, whimsical thing, and also it's fun because no man was going to name a boat charter company that.
Yeah.
And I did kind of want to assert at the time that I was a female in the and that's been fun. And it's also been fun because for chartering there were a lot of people who had daughters that were bringing sailing. They specifically chose to come with me because they wanted to see a woman run a boat. And and so that's also it. So that all came about like kind of and in a sort of silly way.
I like that.
That changed, because without that, I definitely would not have had the confidence to go up, because my neighbor wouldn't have seen me running the boat all the time.
Right. I mean, that's also interesting to see how one conversation led you down one path that brought you into contact, or brought you into contact with that neighbor. And I'm like, this is not like universal whatever. It's just because you were around and working on your boat. So he wanted to know what you're up to, or and obviously wanted to help. And that's how I guess that law of attraction works, because you just show up in a certain way.
Yeah, and
People
also,
see
like
you.
I said, my neighbor had planted. I'm sorry, planted that seed of adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when my mind immediately went back to that conversation with him and thought maybe this is what it is. And I did. The company I work for, they're nationwide, and in the Caribbean. It was going to be Alaska, and it was just a fluke that it ended up being exactly where I wanted. But yeah, there was a lot of a sense of this was supposed to happen, that came because of the sequence of events. And of course, it can be arguing for something. It's a lot easier to see it when it shows up.
Right, and it's also when we talk about it afterwards, it looks probably a lot more linear than it feels while you live it.
Yeah, because I knew that I wanted something that wasn't language related. Like I had researched myself out. I had learned everything that I was interested in learning. I didn't feel like I needed a lot of growth in that area anymore. But very interested in boats, and whatever form they took.
And you really took it very far. I mean, you rewired the electrical system on Rosie. I remember that. It's like, where does that come from? She's a language person. I know she lives on a boat, but now she's doing the electrical work. That was a big deal, I bet.
It was, and that was also a huge confidence builder. Really conversations with people, and they were telling me about these components of an electrical system on a boat, and I was like, I don't. And I had tried. I had taken an electrical class, and it kind of went over my head. Topic. I had read textbooks or boat electrical books, and they all seemed like no, it's not happening for me. And then the boat, and I was like, to go somewhere, I'm gonna have to fix it. And the electrical system was a mess, and I realized like I can't add to this mess. It would be redone, and I need to understand it. So I guess I'm the one that needs to do it. And because I every video there was on ever to this boat until I really understood And somewhere I had YouTube on in my headphones on, because a lot of it you don't have to see. You need to hear lecture.
Yeah.
Like, I just needed to hear how these parts went together. And, there was a great Vancouver, somewhere in British Columbia. And he just did these Q&A, 7-8 minutes long. And so they were perfect if I was walking to the store. And I didn't care if I didn't know what he was talking. This is part of the electrical system of a boat. I should learn about it. And it took me, about 8 months, start to finish. But now I know everything. It's all installed by me, and it's all new. I don't feel like if something broke, I would know where to look. There's a diagram of it. And that's in myself, but even in this boat, which, she will go to Alaska, because it's very frustrating to be in Alaska and look out the window and not be able to go there. And I did a lot of looking out the window at Alaska.
Yeah.
I was I want to go. I want to see that.
Wow.
Past this island, I want to go there.
Yeah.
But that takes big confidence.
Yeah.
And
I think
the electrical system was a big part of that.
That's why it stood out to me so much, and I think it resonates with me. So people out there, you do not have to rewire electrical systems, but the idea I think is so interesting. For me, I had a huge confidence boost in money matters this summer, because when my husband and I were buying a condo, I said, I will take care of the finance stuff, and I did that, and it all had to happen very quickly, and I had to read everything and ask a ton of questions, because I did not grow up in the US. So I come from a very different system where things like mortgages work very differently. And so it was all new, and I had to read a lot, and I had to say, you know what? I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but you have to tell me things I don't even know to ask. That was the thing, because I didn't even know which questions to ask in the beginning.
Right.
So, but then running through that process, I mean, there were like, at least in those 4 weeks that it took only, there were like at least 3 almost heart attack moments. At least, I mean, I was in high anxiety, but I came out of that saying, "Well, I'm a very capable money manager." So that's the thing, where confidence is a result of action.
I think a really important thing that I learned from the electrical project that I did not know about myself is I don't learn from reading. I mean, I do learn from reading,
Right.
and I could have read all I wanted, and I wouldn't have I learned. I found the method that my brain could, and that happened to have been YouTube. And now, when I need to do it, I will go to YouTube and be like, somebody has probably made a video about this, and for some reason, and what was hard in Alaska cooking is you don't have internet, you don't have YouTube. So I didn't get to learn to cook from YouTube. I had a Joy of Cooking cookbook, but that works. But I probably would be a better cook in Alaska.
But I love that, because you, as a language coach, about learning methods, all these things. You've helped a lot of people do it, but still, if you tackle something new, you have to find your way of doing it. And like when you started out with your first business, there was no YouTube yet, right? I mean, we were also okay. Some people learn most by reading, others by writing, others by listening, and this is just a new.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I was learning language, there were podcasts, and there still are, obviously, but the way that people put information out, if they wanted to market in ways that people do with YouTube. I remember listening to Grammar Girl and going through all of her library it was kind of the exact same thing. The electrical, like she touched on every topic, and I was like, I don't know what this thing is that you're talking about because it's relevant in some way to what I'm doing. And then using a podcast, I put out a podcast for a number of years, like 10 years or so. Also a pretty popular podcast at the time, in the language realm. And I mean, me and Grammar Girl were side by side on iTunes podcasts for, and I was like, oh my God, I'm beside Grammar Girl. It's like kind of my hero in a really good way. And I based my podcast on the format that she seemed to be using after studying for so long, inadvertently, just to learn language stuff at that craft. But yeah, that also speaks to like just the audio. Like I said, YouTube, I'm not usually watching. I'm just listening to it. And you know, whatever to us to learn what we need to learn, you know, go for it.
Yeah. And usually the first time you do it is the worst. It's becoming easier the more often you do it. I mean, I remember that my first teaching experience was so bad. I mean, for everybody. For everybody, I have to be fair, it was also very, very bad for the class. So it was not only bad for me. But it got so much better right after that. That first week was hell for everybody, but afterwards, like, okay, you just learn from what you're doing and continue and go, and that's how the confidence grows when you have that chance of getting better at something, and then you take the next leap, right? So, what is your next adventure?
Well, when I get this boat, you know, there's still things to do on her, and that I still need to install, and that's kind of her last big thing. There's interior, there's some rot that I found, which is very unfortunate, but it's not ceiling board, but it needs to come down and get replaced before we hit rainy season here in Seattle. Once these things are done, then next summer, hopefully I'm going to get a trip with my boyfriend north into Canada, and that's sort of a system that I've implemented on her this year, and then the year after that, Alaska, and we'll see how cooking on tugboats fits in with that. Life is not built on that. I was able to save up, which is one of the reasons people go to sea. Like, you can go to sea, you can make money, you can save it up, and you can't spend it while you're
can't spend it. Yeah.
Especially if you're in Alaska with no internet. You can't even go on Amazon and, you know,
no online shopping.
There's no way to spend money either.
Right. The last resort is gone.
So yeah, well, like, you know, it's in with the rest of my life, because it's a good means to an end, and you know, it's fascinating people on these boats. We go to interesting places. I got to go through the Panama Canal and bring a boat through from Alabama to Portland, Oregon, and you know, so there's on tugboats, and you know, the people there are a group always, no matter what, you have some kooky, interesting people who are willing to spend your life at sea. People tend to be interesting to me. People might be repulsed by them, who knows, but I think they're interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll get this, you know, work as necessary on the big boats.
What would you tell someone who feels that, oh, I want adventure, but I have no idea where to get started, how to get there?
It's there. It's probably well outside your wheelhouse. It's, if you know the phrase, it might look nothing like what you think it looks like. I was not for big boats. I was not looking for tugboats. I was not looking for industrial thing. That wasn't anything that I had my eyes open for. I was I wanted something that was interesting and new and fun and grand showed up, and I jumped on it, and and my neighbor, he's like, I talked to so many people about this. He's like, you did it, and 2 months later you and some of it was the timing of things, and it worked out, and
Right.
so that's what I think. The adventures are there. They just think they look like, and
Yeah.
if you're open to it, they'll show up.
Yeah. And if people are interested, I know that when you head out on those adventures, you then right now less, but when you head out, you usually post and have a newsletter. Where could people find you if they are interested in your adventures?
Instagram, and Alaska is easy because it's beautiful. There's no ugly pictures of Alaska. Red Lips, Sink Ships, and then when I'm here when I'm out pictures here, I haven't posted much recently because I've just been doing this grand of a huge chunk of her, and it was just a big ugly mess all summer, and frustrating that off. And then the end result really, it was like, oh, that's amazing to me, but it's to everybody else. But yeah, Red Lips Sink Ships is the Instagram. And as I do stuff, I post it there. Like I said, I haven't posted much that is picture worthy.
Well, I think it might be picture worthy for a lot of people too, to see. It's like, okay, there's a background to that, right? It's not all pretty Alaska. There's work going into it too. So people might be interested in those pictures too. Very last question. What advice would you give your 60-year-old self now that you have broadened your horizon to, well, Alaska? I mean, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, so. I would tell her to take the risk. There's not a lot of things that are that you can't undo. If I had gone to, I was on this boat and I was there for a month, and I utterly hated it, I could have quit. It would have put them in a little bit of a lurch, but that's corporate life.
Right.
To handle that, people walk off boats. That's what happens. There's undo, and so if you want to move to the place, move to the place. If you want to try the career, try the career. You can try a different one. The things that feel really scary and they feel really risky, they really might risky if you look down the road and say, this is undoable. Mistakes can be fixed.
I love that. This is undoable. I love that. I had the same thing when I moved to the US for what turns out to be for good, or at least to become a citizen and everything. I had family members and friends say, but what if it doesn't work out, and all these things. And I'm like, if it doesn't work out, I'll come back. I'll find a new place to live. I mean, I will lose some money, but it's not that much. It's not like I'm betting the rest of my life on it.
Right.
It can be undone. Yeah. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing so much of your story. It was wonderful. I could continue to talk to you for a couple more hours, hearing more about it. That was so interesting. So people, find your adventure, let go of things, and you can undo it too if it's not the right adventure for you. But it might just be, even though it looks like something very unexpected.
Right.
Next week, so thank you for being here, Amanda. And next week, I'm going to talk to Nancy Linneroth, who specializes in EFT tapping. And we're talking about tapping for confidence. You will probably see me tap with her because she probably made me tap, which is okay. Looks a little ridiculous, but it's a super helpful technique. So stay tuned for that one, and have a good rest of your week. Bye. Thank you.